Good evening, my time, and good morning, your time, to Jake, who is joining me from the UK. No, not from the UK, from the Isle of Man, I believe.
Yes, that's correct. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. What time is it there?
It's 10 a.m. at the moment.
Okay, all right then, and it's 7 p.m. here in Australia. So thank you for joining me, and thanks for offering your time, and thank you for filling in a little bit of pre-questionnaire, because it looks like really a very interesting background that you've got. But what I didn't get into in the questionnaire, and what I want to really flesh out here, and where I'd like to start, is simply by way of a little bit of kind of really historic stuff. So kind of where you grew up and how that affected you. What was your childhood like? So if you could tell me a bit about that, and then we might sort of move into your career, and then the move to the Isle of Man, and further into Bitcoin, etc. So tell me a little bit about the early days.
Yeah, I'm from the United Kingdom, in a small town. It's called Rosendale. So when I grew up, I was really like, my dad would, like, take me to everything, whether it be football, I don't know if you call that soccer, rugby, cricket, badminton, any kind of sport I would be into. And then I kind of like settled on football as my, like, what I was really getting into. So as a child, all I can really remember is just playing football all the time. I had, I had a reasonable, we weren't, my dad was very hardworking, two good parents. My dad is a super smart guy. He's a computer programmer. He's mathematically super smart. Sorry if you're listening, Dad, but in social situations, you wouldn't guess that he's smart, if that makes sense.
But we've got our different types of smart, haven't we? And there's social smart, and there's math smart, and there's emotionally smart, and there's mechanically smart, and there's artistically smart. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But because of that, it then kind of, I don't know, you kind of follow your parents, don't you, a little bit when you're younger. And so I was always like intrigued in trying to be good at maths, and so yeah. So I had a weird mix of, I was the sporty kid, but I was also like a bit of a maths nerd as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just kind of go off what you're told when you're younger. It's like, oh, you're good at this, therefore you just keep doing that thing, because it's like, oh, they keep telling me I'm good at this. Which is funny, because I kind of wonder how many people have been told that if they're at school and somebody will say, you're not the smartest, and then they'll just give up. Whereas if they'd have been told they were smart, they might have dug in more. Anyway, yeah, so the town I'm from, it was like a really small countryside town. So if you're from that town, it's kind of like all people know. So it's like very small world view. So I just had in my head, I'll play football. One day I'll be a professional footballer. Failing that, I'll probably be like some computer scientist, and then I'll be a millionaire, and it'll all work
young,
out fine.
happily ever after.
Yeah, it's only like getting around to college years. Like, so I don't know Australia, but college is our pre-university, whereas in America, university is called college. So it's a bit confusing, but
yeah, we don't really do colleges per se. We do universities. And then I think the college experience is, if you want to stay on campus with university, then that's called college. But most people just travel in day trips to their lectures like they do for school.
Yeah, ours is a bit weird, because you go to school, then you do college, and then university.
Okay.
Instead of the other way around. Around the age of like 16ish when I left school, it then quickly hit me of like, what are you actually going to do? Because the sports career didn't pan out with the football. So I went to college doing like it was a sports science like diploma thing. It was basically just playing football, and they marked you off with a grade that would get you into university. Which then led me into doing weird finance at university, which then led into just random paths down random. Just none of them really linked together. It's hard to explain.
Okay, so you experiment, like you tried a whole lot of different stuff at uni?
Well, I was at university doing an accounting and finance course from a sports diploma, which I'd done the sports diploma because I knew you needed certain grades, and it didn't specify it had to be from a certain thing. So I thought I'll do something that I enjoy, which then got me into accounting and finance. But at the same time, I was also I'd just started pursuing a boxing career.
When did boxing come in for you? When did you start that?
So when I was about 13, 14, my dad used to take me to boxing classes just to get in good fitness shape for football.
Yeah.
So I'd kind of like, I knew the basics of boxing. But then when I was about 17, 18, my brother was competitively boxing. And I remember watching his shows thinking, I could do that. So I started going back to the gym, training. I don't know why I took it really, really seriously from day one. I don't know if it was a chip on my shoulder of, well, I think it actually was. It's probably my ego of, there's something about boxing where everyone just likes the tough, it's there's just some weird aura that everyone gravitates to. And it's like, I really wanted to be good at it because you could kind of feel the people not taking you seriously to begin with.
Yep.
So I just like Googled and YouTube searched what the best boxers of all time do and just did that. and then when you train for like 6 to 8 hours a day for you quickly become good at what you're doing.
Yep.
But it's weird because it's not like one day you wake up and you're good. It's like a transition where you don't notice it, and then all of a sudden you're sparring with someone in the gym, and you're like, oh, I was getting battered only 6 months ago, and now. So I got into the boxing, and in the first year I had 10 bouts in the amateurs, and I won the national championships in my first year. So at that point, I was also working part-time at a supermarket, and it was just I had uni, boxing, the part-time job. So I dropped out of uni, and I carried on the job for a little while. But it was really hard work because you have like it's not like if you work for yourself, you can kind of flow in and out of what you're doing. Like, I could make a quick hour here, work out, get back, work again. But you just had rigid 6-hour blocks where I had to be like in the thing, and it just didn't fit with my diet or anything. So I thought, if I can set up
middle of the day block, it was taking up like what a
it was such a pain. It was like Mondays would be 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. and then Tuesdays might be like 12 till 6, and then I might have a day off. And it was all over the place, and then sometimes morning. So I couldn't really plan anything.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought, I was thinking of like, how can I set up some kind of income, flexible, and do it myself around the boxing, which then led me to I ended up setting an e-commerce business up on like eBay and Amazon, and I had my
Okay.
own.
When was this? So what decade are we in?
So we're going back to about 2012.
Okay.
I'll have
Yeah.
been about, I think I was 20 at the time.
Yeah. So
Um,
all of that kind of eBay and Amazon stores were really taking off at that stage, weren't they? They were becoming enormously
yeah,
popular, but also hugely competitive.
yeah, oh, definitely. I mean, I got the inspiration because my dad had started, he was a computer programmer by trade.
Mhm.
Um, but a guy he worked with was making some good money on eBay. And he was basically a friend of my dad's, and he just said, look, there's enough room for everyone. So my dad he started doing swimwear and things like that.
Hmm.
When I was driving to university, I used to drive through this region of wholesalers. So then I just kind of got the idea, like, I'll call in, one day and just see what they've got. And I ended up buying 5 pack socks, like over the knee socks. They were something like £8 for a dozen, which equates to, I don't know, 60 odd p a sock.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I'd sell it for like £3 on eBay. So I bought 5 packs of different colours.
These are,
And
hang
then,
on, why did you think they were going to sell? Was it just simply they were really cheap and you figured you could sell them for more? That was it? It was just like an arbitrage opportunity in
yeah, I
socks?
don't, looking back, I
What
can't,
inspired you to buy socks?
well, what it was when one of the wholesalers I went in, he just had a big wall of socks. And I think it was just like, I was kind of asking him what
What sells well?
sells, and he was just like, "This is a stave." And the guy, he's called Asim. He's a really nice. I'm still friends with him to this day.
Lovely.
Um, but he was telling the truth because they are like one just still now like just a massive sell, and it's weird because
Are they
obviously my
boys? Are they
radar
men's or women's socks or both?
women's, so well they're adult size 4 to 7 designed for women, but they're like over the knee kind of. But I look out for them everywhere. I never see them, so I'm like, who are buying all these? Because I never ever see anyone wearing them. But obviously, uh, but yeah, my plan was I'll I'll buy 5 packs. So I outlaid, I can't remember, it was £40 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then when they sell, I'll just take the profit and buy a new pack, which looking back, I'm pretty sure I could have outlaid another couple £100 and sped this process
Yeah.
sped this process up rapidly, but I never did because I kind of felt like I can never lose money that way.
Yeah.
I
All
can,
right.
I can only lose that £40. And then so I got 5 packs. There were stripy socks as well. So there's like a whole section of stripy socks. So I was like, well, I'll
Sounds like
get.
the kind of thing that would be very popular in Japan for some reason. Did you get a lot of buyers out of Japan?
I didn't, but I get what you're that
Yeah.
kind of K-pop sort of.
Yeah, that kind of look. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I'm imagining.
yeah. I think a lot of it's probably like like the punk gothy girls that
Oh,
wear it.
yeah.
They usually wear them lace gloves as well and things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, that's right. And short skirts and big, like,
Yeah,
oh, I've forgotten it, like not quite Doc Martens, but that style of boot. Yeah,
yeah. I'm fully with you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, So yeah, it was just a try. I was like, well, I'll get all them, and then there was like 20 odd designs of them, and then they had like plain colors, so plain black, plain white, plain red, and then I'll get all of them, and then they had different designs, like ones with skulls on, ones with like Union Jacks on, camouflage, leopard print. So I'll get all of them, and then they had some men's socks, like red, black, it's plain. So I'll get them, and then the
I'm
guy
not
who,
imagining the Japanese men running around in that K-pop look.
no. And then he just transits. So like, I'm like, right, I've done this aisle now. What else have you got?
Yeah,
And
right.
then he sold like fancy dress costumes and stuff. But I quickly figured out that there wasn't the fancy dress costumes was really, really competitive. But he sold accessories as well. So I figured out that I could sell accessories and make sets of accessories. So, you know, if it's Harry Potter,
Yeah. I was just thinking that would be the ones and the hats and the
could either
scarves.
buy the full set, the scarf, the hat, the tie, the cloak, and it just really it then got to a point where it had grown so much. I was then trying to find time to train for boxing around business, which people used to say to me, "Oh, you're so lucky, you've got your own hours, you can do what you want." And it's like, well, yeah, as long as I get up at 9 a.m. and finish work at 1 in the morning and repeat 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And then try and, you know, so I was flexible in the sense as if you rang me up and you said, in the next 30 minutes, could you have 20 minutes spare? Yes, sure. I don't have to ask my boss. But it's like, if you wanted to drag me out for a couple of hours, I'm then going to have to work like crazy trying to catch up on all the odds. So
my husband and I are both self-employed, and I have been for 27 years or something. And yeah, I'm well aware. Yeah.
And I mean,
like
yeah,
and it, like, neither of us would give it up. We both love the autonomy of it, and there is a certain amount of flexibility. And certainly what that's meant is, as our son has grown up, we've been able to work in together to pick him up from school or whatever it might be that's required. But yeah, you're always making it up somewhere in the evenings, on the weekends.
yeah,
You have to do it. Yeah, the work's got to be done regardless. Yeah.
I was just going to say that I wouldn't. I'm complaining, but I wouldn't trade it. Because the 4 hours. If I did a 4 hour shift at the cooperative, I'd pick a full 18-hour day working for myself over that 4 hours any day. But it's still a mental slog to do so.
I'm going to come back to this point a little bit later. I want to keep going with the life story, but I want to come back to this point about self-employed, because I'm wondering if self-employed are overrepresented in the Bitcoin community. I'm wondering if there's something about that, the thinking that likes autonomy, that likes freedom, that value system that naturally ties in to Bitcoin. And I wonder if there's a greater percentage of self-employed in the Bitcoin community than there is on average across the wider society. But let's come back to that. Let's just keep going with the life story. So you're boxing, you've won a national. Can you make money out of boxing? Explain that to me. Like winning national championships, is that like prize money? Is that livable prize money? How does that work?
Yeah, so when I was boxing, I boxed in the amateurs. So in the amateurs, everything, you literally just do it for free. Yeah. And when people get like higher up, if you hear of a well-known professional who's just turning professional, he would likely have been living off sponsorship to get by. Where I never had. Weirdly, being an online salesman, I'm the world's worst. I hate asking for help and things like that. So I never had any. I mean, looking back now, there was ample times where people was like, "Let us sponsor you," and I didn't want to take money from people, so I never actually got anything. When you start getting paid is when you turn professional. And boxing's a weird sport where it's like with football, I would have had to have been scouted, sent to a team to be a professional. So it's on somebody else's say so. As a boxer, you just literally have to pass a medical exam and prove that you're not going to get seriously hurt, and you're a professional.
Right. Okay.
Literally anybody can turn professional, but the way you do it depends on how your career goes. So if I just turned up and said, right, I'm going to be a pro, there's no previous background of me, record of me, nobody knows me. But okay, but your first fight's against this guy who's had won 12. Good luck. Yeah. Whereas if I come in and it's like, hi, my name's Jake, I've had 50 odd bouts, I've won X amount, I've won this championship, that championship, I've got this following. They say, okay, here's your first fight. It's, this guy, he's had 100 and odd fights, he's lost 97 of them. Go out there. And basically the first like 20 fights or so are kind of like, if you look at most professionals now, they don't actually start fighting someone properly until they've had about, I don't know, at least 15, 20 fights, and then it starts getting competitive then.
Right.
And really, I think the reason is it's just to sell it. It's like, we've got this guy, he's had 20 fights, 120. We've got this fight, he's had 30, 130. Who's, you know, and it becomes like, oh, they're both unbeaten, you know. Yeah, getting back to where was I now on the?
So you're boxing and you're running your own business and you're doing crazy hours basically. And
Yeah,
you're pedaling at a million miles. Yeah.
yeah. So, oh yeah, that was what I was getting. The reason why I decided to give up on the boxing was back to the money thing. You've got a couple of, there's like 1% of the 1% that really make it in boxing, and so you've got like, if you look at Manny Pacquiao or you look at Floyd Mayweather or Tyson Fury, they get paid millions, and it looks fantastic, and that is because they are they are just special people that are just really good. Whereas there are some brilliant boxers that maybe become British champions, which is quite an esteemed thing over here, or they might become the Australian champion or European champion, but by the age of 40, they probably, you know, the biggest fight purse would have been like, you know, 40 grand or something, which it's a lot of money up front, but it's like, you know, most people earn that year. It soon goes, you've got bills to pay. But it's not like, it's not a steady, you have to keep fighting to and winning to keep that income going. So I was kind of like, I've got a somewhat guaranteed business here, or I've got super outside chance of something that I was already starting to fall out of love with.
Right.
Not boxing per se, but like the diet and just the, I mean, just the, I think because I hit it so hard from the start, I started training like a professional from day one.
Yeah.
And when you're not getting any kind of income after like 6, 7 years of just perpetually going to the gym, and because I mean, a lot of times I'd have to train on my own. You'd have the boxing classes, but you can't expect, like, my coaches also had day jobs, so it's not like they're just and they used to sacrifice a lot of their time because they used to do Monday to Friday 2 to 3 hour sessions for free, because the boxing club was like a charity. So it's like, it's in the end I was just like, the best decision is just to pack it in. And then I tried making like a a comeback and broke my jaw in the fight, and then it's just like, I think the world's telling me something.
Yeah, indeed. And it's also, I mean, you were still young at that stage, but as you say, the burnout age is really quite young. You know,
and it's
one of those sports, like many sports, where you can be, you hit your peak in what, your early 30s, maybe, you know, late 20s, early 30s, maybe mid 30s. And it's really downhill from there. And it's not a lifelong career. It can be a lifelong passion and hobby, but not really career.
great.
Okay. So what happened from there? So when you say you packed it in, you just cold turkey, got out, or you kept some sort of training because you just enjoyed keeping fit, but sort of moved in a new direction?
It was kind of like a slow fizzle out. Like, I was having all sorts of like relationship troubles and just outside of boxing issues. Then on top of that, when you're going through that and you can't go out and socialize, you can't go for meals with people, you can't drink, can't, you know. So I actually went through like a really bad mental illness phase. And it was really frustrating because I'm like super curious about things. I want to figure out exactly what it is that's not working.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just all through Google constantly, how do you get over and everything you would read, sort your diet out. And I'm like, my diet is literally perfect.
Yeah.
Exercise. I'm like, I couldn't exercise more. And I was basically like, I'm doing everything. What is it? And I figured out what I was lacking is two things. One was progress, which I was viewing my progress from the boxing point of view and relationships, and they were both taking a dive.
Mm-hmm.
And
And the
two,
relationships was because of the hours you were putting in, so you simply weren't available?
not really. I just think it was with incompatible people.
Right.
It. I mean, looking back, it's like there's nothing wrong with them or me. It's just we weren't designed for each other.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I've been there.
But
And I remember when it really struck me with one of my boyfriends along the way, just we're two good people who just don't work together. It's not a matter of either one of us is bad or wrong or doing something terrible. It's just this particular combination doesn't work.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like obviously at the time, you just feel like everything's falling apart, and you just need to just zoom out and be like, it's funny. I look at it now, and it's just like, why just zoom out a little bit,
Yeah.
and yeah.
So what was that
So
process for you? So you're saying you identified what it was and it was kind of the relationship. So what kind of happened in your life and what happened internally? What was that kind of process?
um,
A lot of Googling, you've said, but there might,
yeah, I mean, I remember just being really like, I just felt like lifeless and hopeless at one point. I just really, I used to wake up and I had this like constant, it was like a pain, and
mm,
it was literally in my heart. You know,
mhm.
like they say, like heartache, but it was just like, but nobody else can see it either. That's what makes it worse. And you don't want to say anything, so you just smile to people, get on with your stuff. So I just went on like a bit of like a crusade where I was like, I'll just do good things, and that'll sort everything. So like I just started a load of charity work, donating my time, and then it ended up where that was making me worse because I didn't have time to be doing those things, and I'd now committed myself to these things. And then
Experience too.
if I would ever miss any of them, I would then feel bad about myself and make myself feel worse. You'd beat yourself up, and uh, in the end, what kind of got me out of that rut was when my boxing has kind of there was after one contest, I was just like, look, enough's enough now. I'm not boxing again. And I just kind of started knocking about with friends. Weirdly, going out, just drinking and having a good time. It was, to be clear, it wasn't the alcohol so
Mhm.
it was the being around other people
Yeah.
that I think, and it was just like a big weight off my shoulder. It's like I don't have to live, because that's another thing with boxing. You're in perpetual anxiety. You've got a fight coming up. Like I'd get insomnia. You can't sleep because you're just thinking about your fight, and then sometimes I'd snap out of a trance and I'd realize my fists are like that, clenched, because I'm playing the fight through my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Uh,
Of course.
so did all of that just went off my shoulders. I then started just interacting with people, and then you talk to people and you see more people, and instead of bottling things up, you can actually speak to people, and you realize that people aren't as bad as your mind tell. These weird situations your mind creates for you. Yeah.
Amazing. So you started to come to life really through your friendships and that it's not just letting go of, well, the anxiety associated with every fight, which I can barely imagine, like, obviously having not been there, but I can have some sort of distant sense of, but also just that thing of feeling like I've got to keep going and there's no way out. And, I've got to just keep going and going and going until I achieve the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and to let that all go. I think there's always, I know that I felt that in certain jobs, even in certain relationships, that sense of feeling trapped in it. And
Yeah.
then one day you walk away from it and you go, why didn't that even occur to me? Like, the thought literally didn't occur to me earlier that I could just walk away. It just didn't cross my mind. I thought, I have to keep going. I have to keep going until I've mastered whatever it was. And in my workplace, it might be, a certain financial level or, a certain accomplishment. But in a relationship, it would be, until I can be happy in this situation that's making me very unhappy, I have to learn to make myself happy. So I'd stick at it, and I would be trapped in there because I didn't feel like I could just walk away. I had to prove to myself that I could learn to be happy under any and all circumstances. It was the bizarrest thing. But anyway, so that sense of letting go of all of that is, I can also imagine, must have just been so freeing.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of like it puts the power back in your hands versus I have to do this. I'm then choosing
Right.
what I yeah, because I remember what was weird with boxing is it's like I used to get phone calls off my trainer, and he used to change his voice for some reason. Hey pal, like I knew what was coming. I've got you a fight lined up, and your heart would initially, because it's just your natural response to, it's your fight or flight,
Yeah, literally.
and your heart sinks, and you're like, oh god. But then I'm just very good at overpowering that and just saying, no, you're doing it anyway. And then I'd go, oh great, like that's good. See you in the gym Monday.
Yeah,
Um,
right. And not having to deal with that all the time. Amazing. Okay, so you've let go of that. You're now mixing with people. You've still got the business going on, the online business? Yeah? And okay, take me from there.
Yeah. So at this point, I was kind of like, I need to just relax a bit. And I was kind of like, I was letting the business kind of just free flow, where it was like, it had built up so much, where I was letting the orders come through, but I wasn't growing it. Well, the current workload I had, I was kind of keeping steady. But then I'd say 9 months of doing everything that people usually do when they're 18, when I was like 26 or something like that.
Finally, I'm free to party.
Yeah.
Should have been partying.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'd go and party. And then it's like, it's weird though, because like, I had like a weird, through boxing, I had a million friends, but never any like, I mean, I had one really close friend, but then you don't have like, most people have like the 4 or 5 best friends, don't they? So I had more friends than everybody, but no friends, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like my friend group, it'd be like, some weeks I'll be out with like a group of 40-year-olds. The next week, it'd be like my brother's friends who were 21. The week after that, it might be some people my age. It's just constant different scenario. But I found that was good because I was getting to meet and interact with a lot of different people. And whilst this phase was good for me, there's only so much you can do with that.
Sure.
And then after about like, I don't know, 6 to 9 months, I'd really started to pile some weight on.
Yeah.
Like you could see it in my face, like my eyes were like bloodshot, and so then I was kind of like, okay, right, you've had, you've got out of your rut. What do we want to do from here? And then I was like, okay, I need to get back to the business, and we need to start growing that. But one of the things from the boxing days was I had no vices. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't drink. I couldn't even go for like food, because I couldn't eat anything prepared by usual restaurants. So it'd be like torture. So it wasn't fun doing that. So literally the only vice I had was gambling.
Right. Okay.
So I used to go to the casino a lot, and it was really enjoyable. And I still find it enjoyable now. But when you start earning good money and you don't have a proper concept of, like, now I understand monetary systems and investing and all that kind of stuff. Back then it was kind of like you earn, spend it, you save a bit in fiat. You get nowhere, and then every now and then I'd have a gambling epidemic and just destroy my savings. It'd be like I'd save up for like 12 months. Again, I'd be seeing the progress, and then I'd go to the casino once, and then I'd be back to square one.
There's the lot. Oh God.
But it's weird, because I really dug into that as well, because I was like, what is it? Have I got a gambling addiction? What is it that's driving it? And I didn't have any of the symptoms of, so you take me out of the casino and my brain wasn't going, I need to go to the casino, or I need to go to the bookmakers. I didn't have any of that. And I think what it is, I'm a super competitive person. And when you put me in a casino where the odds are in the house's favour, I will just try and win when you can't win.
Oh wow. Okay.
But yeah, that was kind of important though, because I got to a point where I hit a breaking point with that, and I was kind of like, there has to be more than this. This can't just be. So again, back to Google, I'm searching wealth. How do the what? Because even though my business was earning good money, I was kind of like, and I saved more than most people do. I used to save like, I'd probably save 50% of my wage, I think. Even doing that, I can't. How do they get, stupidly rich? And eventually, I came across a Tony Robbins video where he's just talking about compound interest and the markets going up over time. And that really intrigued me, because, well, first thing I did, I went to verify compound interest calculators, do the work, and I was like, wow, this is he's onto something here.
Yep.
But then again, instead of just following what he said with the passive investing, kind of thinking, I can surely do better than average. Which is funny now, because if I knew how difficult that was, I probably wouldn't have bothered with the endeavor and would have done it passively. But I'm really glad that I did. Yeah. So then I got into like investing. So I started studying Warren Buffett, Benjamin Graham, security analysis. I think one of the first books I read was Security Analysis, which I don't know if you've heard of that. It's like
Is that one back there with the chart on the front?
It's just
it's
a ridiculously big book, and it's like reading a foreign language if you're not into finance. And it'll just say like the PE ratio, price to earnings. When you've done it enough, it's easy to read. But it's talking about income statements, which are then calls a profit and loss statement, and you kind of like getting you'll just see B/V, which means book to value. EPS, what does that mean? Earnings per share. So yeah, I went massively down all that rabbit hole and found it super interesting, like really, really interesting. So then I was kind of like, I really wanted, like, I could do this for a living, because it's, you just know when you enjoy doing something.
It's completely absorbing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd spend like, I'd gone from spending 6 to 8 hours a day boxing to like 6 to 8 hours a day finance. You know, and the good thing with working with an online thing is I could just have YouTube playing in the background, just listening to interview after interview after interview. And then I'd read, and it was fascinating. And it's weird because it's one of them topics where the yes or no answer. You've got to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like,
and you're absolutely right. You've got to figure it out for yourself, because it's also what suits you. It's a lot like food, isn't it? It's like there's no one diet that suits everybody. And what suits one physiology is very different from what suits another. And that's true with your financial life as well, like your risk profile and the way that you think. Like the way that I look at a chart naturally is different. It's not to say that I can't learn other things from other people, but you've got to work in with something that's going to work with your natural strengths.
Yeah,
to some reasonable degree. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I read like quite a lot of but the value investing made sense to me because it explained a way of how you can beat the professionals, because they are constrained by time to quarter results.
Right.
Whereas so it makes sense that you can, as long as you lengthen your time horizon. I mean, the more I've dug into it, like charts were, you know, hocus pocus, you know, just but I kind of get that they are useful because it's basically a visual image of everyone's opinion on the market. Yep. And although I wouldn't make an investment decision based on it, I do look at them a lot, to the point where like the Bitcoin price chart's ingrained in my mind. I could probably draw it by hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Both linear and log scale.
Yeah. The log one's easy. It's just up to the right.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, good. So you've gone down the track of investing. Did you start? So you did start investing in shares, and you were doing that yourself? Were you looking at ETFs? Were you involved in UK share market? Did you do any US? Were you looking at mostly blue chips? Did you start to go down the track of small caps? Where did you go with that?
Yeah, so initially I was trying to, you're just experimenting. So I opened a brokerage account. Thankfully, my dad already had, he had some of his pension in stock. So he had some familiarity. But in the UK, the culture's like, if you go to the US, everyone knows about investing. Like they all have the 401ks and things. In the UK, it's like people invest in the house and that's it. Like they don't know what, you know, if you invest in stocks, you're like a well-to-do, you know. Right. So trying to find someone to talk to in the UK, there's just nobody. So so originally I'd analyzed stocks, but I was always of the opinion, how can I possibly know more than these guys? So I was very, very humble about it. I still am, compared to most that I see on like Twitter and stuff, but I can feel that I'm kind of getting worried because I can feel that humbleness disappearing a little bit. But I would allocate super tiny, you know, like 0.5% to a position, which I was pretty sure of, because I'm like, I've just no idea. Like, you know, I've read all these books, but you know, I could be missing
reality.
Something. You know, why is it cheap? What do I, you know, there's no market crash. How do I know that this is cheap? The first few years was basically me putting positions on. Either the stock would go up a stupid amount in a couple of months, take it off, or 6 months later I'd find out some reason why I was wrong. and then I'd take the position off. And then I'd come across Ray Dalio as well. Now he's not a value investor. He's kind of like a macro investor. So he looks at different things. But he's talking about like the holy grail of investing.
Cycles. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of having a portfolio that's going to do well in any scenario.
Right. Yeah.
Then I started looking at ETFs. How can I get like 6 or 7 ETFs that fit every basket, like a gold one, a stocks one, a bonds one. So then you're trying to understand what's the difference between a midterm bond, a short-term bond, you know, why does a yield going up mean a bond going down? Should the bond not be, you know? And then after my little probably 6 months spat with that, back to the value investing, I'm better off analysing individual companies, which then followed me through to around 20, where I was getting a slightly better understanding of the macro environment, and the yield curve had inverted in the summer. And I started selling off my positions, building a cash position, because I'd studied a lot of like the Great Depression and the old market cycles. And I thought, if I can have a large cash position and one of these crashes happens, I'll be comfortable moving in, and then I should be good for life. As though it's that easy. But it was when the reverse, do you remember the reverse repo blow up, where the Fed came in and they kind of said, don't worry, this is not QE, even they were basically QE. Right. And the market started soaring. And I was like, what is going, you know, everything's stupidly valued. It's record valuations. They're still going up. Nothing's cheap. What's going on? Then the COVID crash happened, which was kind of like vindicated me to make me feel as though I was right, which was just, I was not right. It's some unforeseen thing happened, which nobody could have seen. Although, kind of say, we knew that, you know, the stocks were going down. And I was sat there with a large cash position, like thinking, come on, this is it. I had a load of companies which I was just waiting for it to get to their level. And then when the stimulus package got announced, everything just started going up. And my brain was going, everything's locked down, everything's shut down. It's a pandemic. How can they weren't even cheap? How can it be
going up?
So, yeah, so it was like in the 2008 crisis, things really got cheap for a little bit when the S&P went to like 600. And you could say, well, they were cheap, so you know you could have got in then. Or you look at the Great Depression, things got really, really cheap. What I didn't realize,
like it stayed down there. Yeah.
Yeah, and
you had
the
time
reason
to
was
accumulate if you were going to be in a position to, you know, to invest more.
Yeah. Well, what I didn't realize was that it's the denominator that we're denominating these things in that is moving around. It's not so much the stocks. Because Ray Dalio had come on and he'd said they've done this before. They did it in 1930, did it in 1971. They've just flooded the market with money. Assets are going to go up. And I'm saying, yeah, but in 1933, they'd already had the 90% collapse. You know, and my brain just couldn't. So I'm like, I'm missing something here. You know, so then I'd really got into like central banking, money, what is money, inflation, because I'd always ignored inflation in the past, because I used to hear on podcasts saying you need to figure out your inflation adjusted returns, not just your returns. And I used to think, well, if I'm making 10% in the market and inflation's 2%, does it really matter, you know, if I've got millions in the end? But what you soon realize is the 2%'s a lie. And it really matters, because if money's going into the system assets go up. If money's coming out, assets going down. Why? Because you're denominating in the thing that's expanding and contracting like that. But then...
And the thing that just goes through my mind around that as well is that inflation compounds as much as your returns.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's and another thing which, if you're aware of Lynn Alden, something that
I mean, funnily enough, I was thinking of her before as you were talking about, excuse me, Ray Dalio, because I know that he really kicked off a lot of her macro thinking. I
mean, I think she's brilliant, and she wrote an article which I'd been thinking about, but when you read it and it's like, that's what I was trying to say, but I couldn't put into words. And she was talking about the technological deflation that happens anyway due to productivity and our advancements. They bring prices down. Now, if inflation is 2% and you've had 2.5% technological deflation, inflation's actually 4.5%. The 2% is a lie. So the 2% is probably 6% plus the 2.5%, which is 8.5%. You start compounding 8.5%, and you're quickly going to, decline your purchasing power. So your account balance might be going up in your pounds or dollars or euros or whatever, but what you can actually buy with that is quickly going to deteriorate.
And there's some amazing stats around, and I won't be able to do the maths off the top of my head, but there's also some stats around that I'm sure I've heard from Lynn, which are around a certain amount of your purchasing power has got something like 90% of intergenerational wealth. Maybe I've heard this from Mark Moss, is gone kind of over the space of 20 or 40 years or something like that. So again, that sort of compounding effect leaves you with really a massive loss over a long period of time.
That figure sounds about right to me.
Yeah. The other one who's really interesting on that, have you read Jeff Booth's book, The Price of Tomorrow?
Yeah, I love that.
So that's about the deflationary effect of technology.
Yeah, that was another great book for, like, it's most of the book doesn't really, just the overline of the book, it really got me thinking differently about deflation, inflation, and it's really just a massive propaganda job that deflation is seen to be such a horrific thing. It's like, if you're in a credit-based, have credit deflation, yes, that's going to be bad and appear to be bad because everyone's using credit because of the system. If you go, Jeff talks about first principles a lot. If you go back to first principles and you have sound money, deflation is a brilliant thing because it is providing us with more for less. How anyone can view that as bad is beyond me. But it is because they are looking at a credit system that we are in, and they are seeing every time you see deflation, people lose their jobs, lose their houses. And it's because it's credit deflation, not technological advancements deflation. But I kind of somewhat understood that, but him putting together saying, how can them systems coincide? How can you have a system that has to exponentially expand versus a backdrop of technology that's exponentially going the other way? And once you get that, it's like you have to get out of your way and realize we have to change, or else we're going to destroy ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up the issue of propaganda, and there was a really interesting thing I just heard today listening to, I haven't been able to listen to the amount of podcasts and sort of Bitcoiners that I normally listen to recently. I've just gotten busy with work, but I did get to listen to some this evening on the road. And it was James from Invest Answers was talking about the Fed know they have to inflate their way out of debt. It's the only way they can do it. They back themselves into a corner because of the kind of inflationary recessionary trade-off. And so, and with the size of the debt that they've got, which is about 130% of GDP, and that's a make or break level. And so, so they need to inflate, but the story they have to tell is that we're fighting inflation with everything we've got. Because you can't say we're pro-inflation and we need inflation for our own purposes. It's really difficult to hear that stuff and not start to become almost conspiratorial in your thinking. And I start to feel like I'm some, tinfoil hat person wandering around with these ideas about what the Fed is saying and what they're actually doing and what all governments and central banks are saying versus what they're actually doing. And I can feel really alone in that. And so I get onto Twitter to be around the Bitcoin community because I feel like they're thinking the same way. And then I think, are we all just like, are we all mad? And then you read people like Lynn and Jeff and you think these are some of the smartest people I've ever come across. At least I'm in good company,
Well, I think the problem is if you're a critical thinker and you want to get at what's true. So like, for example, from my investment background, I just want to make money. Like, I'll be honest, I wanted to make money. So I didn't care about anyone's agenda. What is the truth? Because I need to know that to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think a lot of them, they get into like, they just, they have their platform that is based on whatever, and they have to push that and they get stuck in it. But like the money system, kind of everything flows from it. But you've created this system, and from my understanding, I mean, I've read a lot of like Rothbard and Mises, and if you read about like the Great Depression period, when you go into a depression, the production costs have to drop to a level where they're below the prices of the goods that they sell, so that they can become profitable again. Now, it become politically unpopular for wages to drop. So they decided to fix wages and guarantee wages. Wages is one of the largest costs of production. So that fixed. So then they couldn't get it under, and that's why the depression happened, because they wouldn't let the wages drop on top of all the other meddling they did with the monetary system and everything else. So what Maynard Keynes suggested was, if you expand the money supply and inflate, your costs of production, such as like your tractor and tools and all the rest of it, they'll go up. The prices charged to customers will go up, but we can keep wages the same so that nobody's had a pay cut. So they've had a real terms pay cut, but they'll be too stupid to notice it. And he was right. And that's, in my opinion, what kicks off this entire system of we'll inflate. And every time you get to inflate our way out. But back to what Jeff says, that then gets exponential, where it just gets silly. But everything's then tied into that, because the government then gets to dictate, because they're the ones that are in charge of, like Seyfriedin says, they're in charge of the money printing. Any kind of thing that goes against the inflation system. So it's like, well, meat's going up a lot, and people are going to be annoyed that meat's bad. Okay, we'll just send in the propaganda team and we'll tell them that meat gives you heart disease and you need to eat this sludge, which hasn't gone up in price. So you're not seeing a rise in living standards. And, it just goes back to everything, but it's like, it does get very, where you do quite, am I a conspiracy theorist? And you're like, well, no, because I'm trying to verify what's true. Nobody else has bothered to verify. They've just watched the TV. In my mind, they're the conspiracy. Like, you seriously believe that, like wearing a cloth mask is going to stop? And they just sit there and they go, yeah, yeah, this is what. And but then, like central bankers, it's like you were saying, if I was Jerome Powell, what would you do?
Mm-hmm.
I can't announce. I mean, I know what I'd do. I'd print money and I'd buy Bitcoin and not tell anyone. And then when everything goes messed up, I'd say, don't worry, we've got all this Bitcoin.
Someone posted today all the creditors, all the big institutional and government creditors for Celsius. It's in the chapter 11. And there's like the SEC, and there's the Californian Financial Protection Agency, and there's these risk management companies. So everyone who's talking about how evil Bitcoin is invested in Bitcoin and got their bags on DeFi platforms, earning interest.
Remarkable though, because it's like, just buy the Bitcoin and cold store it, and everything's fine. But they have an issue with that, but yet they use these DeFi. I mean, if you're, I could never be bothered looking into it because I weren't using it. But if I'm managing billions in assets for other people, you could at least read the document and understand where they're getting their income from and generating. And none of them did.
Yeah, although, yeah, we could get into the ins and outs of that and just how much was kind of covered up and seemingly legitimately so. And people who really did their research were still blindsided by that. But let's actually get away from that particular scenario. So at what point did Bitcoin just sort of slowly dawn for you as you were reading through all of this? I mean, you've come across Lynn somewhere along the track, you've come across Jeff Booth somewhere along the track. So somewhere you're going down this rabbit hole, as you say, of the central banks and the money printing and how they dealt with the depression. And so I'm assuming that in there somewhere, someone mentioned Bitcoin as the antidote to some of this, yeah?
Yeah, well, in the COVID crash, somebody was, I can't remember, it was some macro guy. He kept going on about Bitcoin.
Right.
And one of my concerns was, I was just like lazily not looking into it properly. They'll just ban it. And they said, if you think they'll ban it, you are agreeing that it will get, that they have to ban it. So you should own some. So I put 0.25% of my portfolio into it. So it was then already on, and I think the day after it dropped like 25% or something in a day. And I was like, oh, this Bitcoin thing. So it was on my radar, so I knew what it was, but I didn't know what it was, if that makes sense. And then I went through the process of economics and all that stuff. And because I have no formal education on it, I wasn't indoctrinated, shall we say, on economics. But I had to read the whole line of, there's some Keynesian stuff I read, some Chicago school, like the monetarists, Milton Friedman, some Austrian school. None of the others made sense. As in, there were bits that say that make sense, but then it's things that you can't Google, is this right? You have to just think about it. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense. And then I came across the Austrian school, and that's when everything clicked. It was like, yeah, here's the answers for what they've not said. And what I don't understand is they've answered it. It's indisputable. They'll argue it. But when I hear them arguing, I already know what their argument is. Whereas I don't think they know what the Austrian argument is.
Yeah.
Which, discovering that, and then it was then when I started accumulating Bitcoin through like May, June of 2020. And I was getting familiar with it, but I was kind of like, this is interesting. It's money. Then when I read Saifedean's Bitcoin Standard, that was really like, I'd not heard about stock to flow before. I'd not heard about time preference. And I was like, yeah, this really makes sense. Because I was also reading a lot of Great Depression stuff by Murray Rothbard and von Mises, and I kind of realized this has solved for the reason why gold didn't work. So gold had to be centralized, it wasn't gold itself not working, it was governments coercing gold, which is, you could argue, gold not doing its job. But Bitcoin fixes that. And then you just get deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole of all the things that money coerces and then it then just becomes a moral imperative to own Bitcoin, where you're like, you should actively be opting out of this. You should be trying to defund this. It's a disgusting system, really, and it's largely hypocritical because the proponents of the system will tend to be like, they'll be proponents of do-gooders, but if you think back to first principles of what they're actually doing, you're impoverishing. You see, they don't see the billions of unbanked, living in Africa, in South America, because they're in a privileged life, and for them to call Bitcoin, oh, it's just used for money laundering, or any other kind of thing like that. So yeah, that's and then since then I've just been down the rabbit hole, and keeps getting deeper and deeper.
Yeah, and I think that's very easily done. And I got to go to the Miami Bitcoin conference earlier this year.
Oh yeah,
which was amazing, to be around 35,000 other people who all, think like we do, and who, I like your words, kind of the moral imperative, because and I guess this is why I was really interested in doing this podcast, is to go, well, are there common themes, for instance, in our values and the way we think? And I'm interested, so values and then morality. So you're right about people needing to perpetuate the system, whether that's through ignorance or whether that's through, is it by design or is it by, by accident, as it were. But certainly this thing is just this well-oiled machine that just keeps going and going, and all the beliefs are in place, and really, unless you stop and question it. And I've been really questioned, and not just questioned, but sort of piled on and called names, and it's considered a madness to be thinking about inflation as being evil. Everyone just accepts it because we're all just brought up in this air and this atmosphere of deflation as evil, exactly as you said earlier, and inflation is normal. And it's just this whole, it's this giant system of just belief systems of how the world works and how the economy works, and it's so widespread and embedded. I do wonder, therefore, about how people happen upon Bitcoin. And I can hear how your journey got you here. How did your values line up? So you're obviously critical thinking. That's a point you brought up a couple of times. So you're looking at what you're reading and you're going, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense? And there's no right or wrong. It's up to me to figure it out. There's nobody who's going to tell me what's right or wrong, because everybody thinks they're right, or everyone's going to try to convince you that they're right, even if they, even if they don't believe themselves, then they've just got an agenda that they're pushing. So your critical thinking, so that's part of your value system, that's part of your personality. What else is setting you up to see this as a moral imperative? Why did you use those words?
I think when you understand the entire monetary system and exactly what it affects, like money's, like it's been said before, it's the base layer of society, and Ray Dalio talks about these long-term debt cycles and how, and, there's the thing on the fourth turning, and I agree with the fourth turning, but what I think he misses is that's of the monetary system being manipulated. So you look at eras where there's massive polarization, and Ray and I think it's Andrew Strauss, they both get this. They get that there's a polarization. They get that there's the wealth divides. They get that the populism, the rise of there's tyrannical leaders left and right, and then there's wars because of these leaders. But if we fixed the money, we would fix that, because then that wouldn't happen. And I still think you'd get the fourth turning of different parents raising different kids, have different outlooks on life, and then raise a different generation. But it would be like that instead of like dramatic boom bust. So, I mean, Seyfried touches on this. I think it's in the fiat standard. How can you finance a war if you can't print money?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is you have to have the money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you do your first war, then you've no money. Good luck financing your second war. This war would last like months instead of, you look back at World War One, they delinked from gold. They printed money to finance a stupid war over a spat between, a few of the upper class, and then all the lower class go and fight in trenches for 4 years. Germany gets destroyed as a country, and then they get slapped with reparations, and then because of that, the central planners start to print money and destroy the country even more, which then leads to populism, and it's your fault, it's their fault. Here comes Adolf Hitler, I can fix it. And then that leads to World War II. Do we learn from that? No, we print money again. And then, in between, you end up with like, you've got Vietnam, you've got like France's colonialism in Africa, all financed via fiat currency. And then just all the little things in between it, like the indoctrination at universities, you've got, the meddling with healthcare, the meddling with nutrition. I mean, there's countless atrocities committed by the state, all financed via money printing. And then there's a tool to stop that. I cannot see how I could possibly look myself in the mirror, not knowing that I've done everything I can to help this system succeed. Because we're here on such a small blip of a timeline. In hundreds, thousands, millenniums to come, if we fix this now, we will really fix humanity. Because I feel like once we're on the system, it'll become so sticky that, help to God, we're not wrong about this, but it'll be, you should then be in a world where you attain money by providing value to other people, which then just kicks off a feedback mechanism, and then people's time preferences lower. People think about the future more, and it should just be constant growth from there. And you don't have time for wars because you're trading with one another. You don't have some overlord that's telling my people to go fight their people. I just think Bitcoin, in terms of it's probably the most. I think anyone who cares about humanitarian is almost everybody. Although everyone comes at different conclusions, they should care about Bitcoin. It's the reason why they don't is because they don't understand it.
Indeed. All right.
Yeah.
And I wandered down very similar tracks to you and ended up in the same place. It was interesting to hear Jordan Peterson at the conference. One of the things he said, though, was he gave a kind of warning in terms of we can be so utopian in the Bitcoin community about what Bitcoin can do. And he said, beware, because everything has a downside. You know, nothing is perfect. And the same way that communism was a utopian idea that came with more than its fair share of evil, you know, so he was saying, I don't know what it is, but don't assume that it will deliver only positives. And it was a warning well heeded by me, because I can get very carried away with what I think it can fix.
Yeah, I think my issue with that statement is opposed to what. So it's like, you know, there could be some bad consequences. Well, we have certain bad in the system we're in.
Fair call. Yep.
If not complete destruction.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'll take the risk.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, that was my I actually watched that interview, and I really enjoyed it, because I'm quite fond of Peterson.
Yeah.
I think the trouble he has with, you can only be an expert in so many things.
Of course.
He's still in the process of understanding. I mean, I'm actually really grateful that he took the time to learn it, because he could have been one of those really sticky, irritating figures where he's super intelligent and just would bat it off, but he didn't. He took the time, and he's I feel like he's understood it now, but it's like he's an expert on so many topics. You know, how much stuff can you fit in there? So,
but it will suit his thinking in many ways, because at the end of the day, he's a psychologist. And the point about this is, whilst it's economic, there's also a really deep degree of I'm thinking around psychology, around the fact that more around the kind of the network effect, and people taking it on and learning and integrating and educating, and then the psychological aspects of the Fed versus the people and the revolutionary mindset of it. Like, there's a lot psychologically to unpack within this.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Tell me about, I was commenting when we got online before we even started the recording, I noticed there was a Bitcoin book in the background there, and you told me you've written that book. So
yeah,
this is not meant to be a shameless promotion, but hey, we're here, why not? So tell me about that. Tell me why you wrote that and what's in it.
Well, my girlfriend had been asking me to write the book, or write a book, for a while, and I just kept saying no. And then I tried in January, and I was trying to explain the reason for her asking me to write it, because I'm constantly watching things, and I'm just sat there arguing to myself in the telly, saying, no, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. She was like, just write a book then, and then get your thoughts out there. And I tried writing about what money is, and I gave up, because I wanted to do it simply, and to do that simply is almost impossible. I just kept going off on tangent after tangent after tangent. But then I get asked about, I've orange pilled almost all of my friends and family. But I'm now like the go-to guy where I get a phone call if the price has dropped, what's going on, you know. And I kept getting the same questions over and over again. So I just wanted a book that they could read. I could just give them and say, just read that. But also I'm really curious and I like reading, but there's some books I read and they're so hard to read that I start daydreaming and then have to reread the page. And I'm like, if I'm trying to introduce somebody, that is no good. So for example, I read the Bitcoin is Venice book by Alan Farrington and Sasha Myers. And I also write in my books when I disagree with stuff. I rarely wrote anything. I just highlighted stuff because it was a brilliant book. But it took me forever to read it because it's so hard to read. I'm constantly Googling words, you know, I'm having to go back over the page. And so I wanted something where it was enjoyable to read, where you could read it, where you could just pick it up, skim through it. There's humor in it. But it basically starts off, what is money? And it just describes the properties of money from an Austrian school understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Then it describes why gold was selected by the free market as money. So people can get a grasp of, so money should be backed by something. Then it describes how the government have devolved our money. So why gold failed, basically, and what the fiat system is.
Mm-hmm.
It then describes why Bitcoin is superior money,
mm-hmm.
and why it fixes all the problems discussed. And I get into a few other different things like valuing Bitcoin. So I talk about like the price. When people say like, it's $20,000 a coin, what does that mean? But if you look at the entire market cap, $500 billion, you can then compare it to other assets. So like gold's 10 trillion roughly, stocks 100 billion, bonds, more than that. This thing is trying to be global money. So what it is now, it's severely undervalued.
Mm-hmm.
And then I discuss, I've got like a chapter on a bit more of just like a thought experiment about what happens if we don't adopt Bitcoin, where I think everything will centralize and we'll likely destroy ourselves, because technology will get better, weaponry will get better, smaller states get sucked into larger states, and which is why I think Bitcoin is an important tool in decentralizing us out. And then if you get some bad actor, it's only some tiny Anton or something like that. But yeah, it was just written with the intent of lighting a spark for people, to get them questioning, saying, well, hang on, if this is how the system works, and maybe they'll then be curious enough to read more.
Fantastic. How's it gone? So you've been handing out mostly to friends and family? Have you been online?
Well, it's on Amazon.
Yeah.
I've recently figured out how to make the PDFs free on the website, Bitcoin Exponential Freedom. I donate the proceeds to charity anyway, because it's not about making money. I'm fortunate enough anyway, where I've landed on my feet through work, and I'm incredibly grateful that I came across that Tony Robbins video, or else I'd still be stuck in a fiat lifestyle. So it's just I'm just trying to help educate people, and I pick up on a few niggly points about the difference between purchasing power and inflation, deflation, that your macroeconomists they say I mean, what did you watch the Jeff Snyder on the What Bitcoin Did podcast? Right.
I don't think I did, and I watch a lot of Peter McCormack, but no, I'm not sure.
Well, Jeff comes on.
And tell me what he talked about, and it might come to me.
He's a super smart guy. He comes on. He's got his shirt, his tie. He looks the part. He sounds the part, and he talks with complete and utter confidence. And he says things that are wrong. So he says the money supply has to be elastic. It doesn't. And then he said money not being elastic then caused the Great Depression. And you sat there and you're like, there are people in here, and they're going to listen to that and believe it, because it takes him 5 seconds to say that, and then it would take me like a day to refute that. And
did McCormack push back?
No, I don't think he. Peter's a brilliant podcast host, but I don't think his expertise enough. But I think Lynn Alden came on after that, and she kind of just.
She would have corrected everything. Yeah, I was going to say, he interviews enough Bitcoiners that if they've listened to Jeff Snyder, they've heard other people as well, hopefully, that give the other side.
Yeah, but it's like basically the Great Depression, they expanded the money supply, and then all of a sudden stopped, which is what they've done now, which is why you're seeing such an aggressive decline in assets. Now, in Jeff's mind, he just said the money stopped being elastic, so therefore this is what's causing the depression. No, you originally made it elastic and then stopped. It wasn't the fact it was elastic, because if it would have stayed inelastic, you would have had no problem. It's just trying to come back to its base, and everything's trying to reset. I mean, the issue we have, the politicians and central planners know that, so then they elasticate it, which is, I think, what's probably going to come in the next year or so. They're going to start printing like crazy
again. Yeah, I think that's certainly on the cards. So what's your price prediction? Give me over a 10-year time horizon. So let's say by 2030 or 2030.
2030. Well, I'll caveat by saying in today's nominal numbers.
Yeah, right, so, sure. Yep.
I'm pretty crazy with it. 2030, probably £2 million, roughly.
£2 million. Okay,
maybe
what's that in US dollars?
Coin. Probably. Well, that's another thing. You don't know what the dollar price is going to do versus the pound. But I don't know, somewhere like $2.5 million or something.
Okay, so
this is probably going to be replayed.
Do you think the governments will have any chance of suppressing it, of it not doing what we all think it's going to do?
I think
even by just freezing on and off ramps or something like that.
Yeah, that would be the best way for them to go about it, I think. But I think if you was going to end it, you would need the US to end it. And they've been pretty clear they're doing the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is, you look at Europe and it's a bit like, I'm not sure about those guys. But what will happen is Europe took the stance of, we don't want to adopt the internet. It's just used by money launderers. It's just used by drug dealers. It's just used for child pornography. That's all it is. Oh, we're not having it. And then the US just had light touch regulation and said, just innovate. And then where's Google based? Where's Facebook? Where's Twitter? Where's Amazon? They're all in the United States. And for as dumb as they play on camera, I think the US leaders, I think they recognize that the dollar system has to fail. Do we really want to turn our country into just a wasteland, or do we want to adopt this? And although they haven't been going out saying, "Oh, everyone buy Bitcoin," because they can, because then that will collapse the dollar. They've also not been doing the things that you would do if you were trying to ban it. So, and then because the rest of the world's on a dollar system, it's kind of the US that calls the shots, and if they're happy with it. But then I've seen in the UK, they seem to be coming around. I think they've had the spat with Europe over Brexit, and I think they've realised Europe don't like Bitcoin, and they've gone, hang on a minute, we can attract all this capital and talent, and it'll be a case. Have you read The Sovereign Individual?
Yeah, I just finished it recently. Yeah.
So I think it'll be a case of that. The ones that pull hard on Bitcoin will see the intellectual capital leave, and they will just get poorer and poorer and poorer, which will likely make them pull harder, which unfortunately is not good for the lower class that live there, that don't understand what's going on, which is why, again, I'm trying to educate as many people as I can. And the ones that do accept it and are open to it they will flourish. I don't, because I mean, like, places like China aren't going to want it, but it's kind of like, do you want to be against a coin, a form of money that a communist regime doesn't like?
Indeed, yeah.
Says it all, yeah.
I'm getting conscious of time.
Yeah.
Is there anything, I mean, I'm thinking there's so much about your life that I didn't get into, but there's only so much we can do here. And I didn't get to the piece about Isle of Man, which I'm actually a bit disappointed about. Well, tell me anyway, what made you move to the Isle of Man? Because I love the Isle of Man. I came there for my 40th birthday for the TTs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
A while ago now, but that was my special treat to myself. What made you move there?
Well, I'd never actually been to the Isle of Man before, but during the COVID thing, I was getting really, really fed up with the propaganda, and the UK was trying to bring in a law that made you have to show vaccine passports when to certain, and I just said enough. And then also at the same time, I wanted to be somewhere with no capital gains tax.
Right.
And I'd read Sovereign Individual, The Fourth Turning. I agreed that we're ripe. I mean, this is a breeding ground for a major war. I wanted to be on an island, tax, and no silly COVID policies. And the Isle of Man was literally, it's like a 2-hour ferry from.
Yeah, I remember that. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of like, if we go and things don't work out, we're literally just a few hours away anyway from going back home. I mean, if I had enough money, I'd have probably gone to like the Cayman Islands or something, but the Isle of Man had to do.
Yeah. Slightly different weather.
But we moved
But that's
there.
actually interesting to hear about the freedom there and stuff, because I've got a British passport. I could come and live in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
I could come and live on the Isle of Man. Never occurred to me. And I've been thinking about where are the different places I could go if I wanted that freedom. And you've just planted a seed for me. So I'm pleased I asked you that.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting is they've got the Manx pound here, which is one form with a pound, but they can't print pounds. So the government's small. So they're kind of like, they can't print power. So let you get on with stuff, which is good.
Fascinating. Oh, really interesting. I'm going to have to read up more about that. Or I may even liaise with you a little bit more after this interview and ask you more about that. But I'm feeling like we've been going for a period of time now, and I've covered off some of the core stuff I really wanted to chat about with you. So I want to thank you enormously for your time. Fascinating to hear some of your story, but also really kind of verifies a lot of not only my own thinking around Bitcoin, but about Bitcoiners. And it's nice to know that we share as many of the same kind of values and ideas and ideals as we can. So a pleasure, and I wish you well, and I look forward to crossing paths with you on Twitter and elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
All right then, take care and be well. All the best. Cheers for now. Bye.